Welcome everybody, my name is Kurt Dreier and I'm going to be your drawing instructor for this semester. Drawing is one of my most favorite things to do, and this is my studio. We've got just about everything I need here, but I kind of want to go through some initial things as you start this course, especially if you're going to be remote. And we're going to go over some different materials that I like to use and what they're there for. And so if your parents have an interest in buying you something, or you want to buy something, at least you know what you're going to buy. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go through a bunch of different things that we have and tell you what they're for. So let me switch my scenes here. All right, so starting off, artists are not people who never make mistakes. They're only people who will be able to fix their mistakes without making frisbee art out of it. And a lot of times I say it's frisbee art because I just toss it across the room. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to make frisbee art. We want to be able to correct our mistakes. So I've got some erasers here I'm going to talk about, and then also some pencils over here. So let's just start off initially, and one of the first things, of the first kind of pencils you have is usually just a regular number 2 pencil, and a number 2 pencil oftentimes is, in art terms, called an HB. An HB is hardness in black, the H and the B. Typically that's right in the middle. So if we have a kind of a continuum here of the blackest black and the lightest color, an HB kind of falls right in the middle of it. Okay. Now, pencils are graded in softness. So we always call this lead, but it's really not lead. It's actually graphite. And it's graphite mixed with a little bit of clay. So depending on how much clay there is in it is how soft it is, and how much carbon there is. So we have HBs here. And then as we move in this direction to the black, we usually use just the suffix B. So we have 2B, 4B, 6B, 8B, and some manufacturers make different kinds of different numbers, but then we usually go to ebony. When we go this way, we go to 2H and 4H and 6H and 8H. Now these are really, really hard pencils, and so every one of these tools has a reason, and it has a good thing about it and a bad thing about it, or at least just a better use of it. So what we need is to know how these are all used. Okay, so and we say that we want a really dark color, so we might use an ebony pencil, and I have an ebony pencil here that I've got kind of shaped where a lot of the graphite is exposed. Here's what it would look like as a new one. They're about 95 cents a piece. So this is, I think, and what I'm going to be giving you is one of these. It's a good standard pencil to start off with. It's very dark and pretty smooth. A good pencil is going to not have little rocks in it. And so as you draw, you're going to find out that if you're using just a cheap pencil like Rose Art, a lot of times you're going to be drawing and you kind of feel that it's kind of scratch the paper. And that is a little stone in there. And sometimes, a lot of times, I'll just get a scratch piece of paper and kind of rub it until that little stone gets out of there. But this has pretty good lead. And so this makes a pretty dark line. And if I choose to go lightly, I can really feather this out, so I can get pretty black. It's a good pencil to start with. Okay. Now, if I did that with, let's say, a harder pencil, like I've got this 2H, that's about as hard as I like to go. It's kind of a different line. Typically, a lot of the times the lead is actually even smaller, and you don't with the same amount of pressure as this, you're going to get a lighter line. Now I can press pretty hard, but the problem with that sometimes is that I'll actually dent the paper. And then what happens when you dent the paper is that I could erase it. Let me just do that real quick. I'll take my pink pearl and we'll get to that a little bit later on. And I can erase the actual graphite, but then when I go to draw over it, it kind of leaves a little mark right there. It's kind of like doing one of those leaf rubbings, if you remember doing that. So let me see if I can get that a little closer here. And I'm going to focus probably. I don't know if you can see right here, it just leaves a little mark. So this is really great for drawing lightly, but if you press really hard, then you'll dent the paper, and then there's really no fixing that, because after that point, I've just got an actual depression in there. So let me crank this back up. So you say, well, why don't I just use the Ebony Pencil all the time? Well, the Ebony Pencil makes really black blacks. It's really smooth. I don't have to put much pressure on at all to get a dark line. But the trouble with that is it really smudges really badly. So I can take my finger and I smear that really easily. Now this one, there's not as much graphite on there because it's so much harder. It doesn't smudge as much. So there's just always a trade-off, whether it's going to be soft and really dark, but it's also going to smudge a little bit more. So when you do this, I highly recommend like taking another piece of paper. I've got another piece of paper here, and I'm just going to put that over this. And so as I'm drawing, I'm going to put rest my hand. Let me get this. Let me come on over here. So as I'm drawing, I've got this piece of paper here. I should have maybe made it a different color. So, but it's. Let me see if I can do this here so you can see it. So this is kind of covering it up, and my hand is resting on this blank sheet, so that way the palm of my hand right here isn't rubbing on the paper. Okay, so so now there's all different kinds of other pencils that we have here. This one is an HB, so it's kind of a good halfway between kind of pencil. It's not real hard, it's not real soft, just a good standard pencil. So I would recommend starting off with one of those. I also have like a 6B, so it's a little closer to that ebony. And here's an 8B, and you can notice that how thick the graphite is here. This one is almost like a colored pencil here. This is a different manufacturer, and you can kind of see how much darker that is compared to 2H. I rarely use an 8H. So a lot of times what happens is a parent will go out and very well-meaning buy you a nice art kit, and it's not like you're going to waste it or not, but a lot of times they'll have a 6H, a 4H, a 2H, an HB, a 2, a 4, a 6. A lot of times they might even have the in-betweens. They might have a 3B or a 3H. I don't, from my personal opinion, I don't think that we need those in-betweens. So you could probably spend your money a little bit more wisely, probably maybe with a 4H, an HB, and then maybe a 4B, and maybe if you get an 8B, but definitely an ebony. So you could get by with really 4 different kinds of pencils and do it kind of cheaper. Now, I want to kind of go over some of the erasers now. So I've made a mess here, and let me just make a little bit more of a mess as we go along. This is my ebony pencil again. Give me something to erase. See how nice and smooth that is. I don't see a bunch of pencil lines. And we're going to talk about that in another video, how we're actually going to shade throughout this. But so one of the most popular kinds of erasers is a pink pearl. Now it could be, they're just generally pink. That pink pearl is an actual brand that people have, or a company makes, but there's a lot of different ones. There's a pink carnation, and then there's probably a lot of other generic just pink ones. This is a good standard kind of eraser. A lot of times it's wedged like this, so you can kind of get a sharper point. Once it starts getting used a bunch, then you might round that off a little bit. Now, one of the things, though, that I want you to think about is how much are you handling this? Because your hands have oil on it. And when your hands get oily, then they attract a little more graphite. So sometimes these erasers will get really, really black because your hands have just been touching them a bunch. And I'm going to show you another one in a few minutes that really does that really badly. So, but this is a nice, good standard eraser. And because what happens is I can erase some pretty dark lines. Now, but what you notice, again, like I said, just the same thing with the pencil, there are some good uses for everything, and there are some things where it has some shortcomings. So this is really nice because I can erase that pretty black pencil line. However, look what my byproduct is. I've got all these crumbs here. And then what happens is I take my hand and I brush them off, and then I don't know if you can see that, but already I've started to get some graphite here on my hand. And so then I start going like this, and then I start smearing it all over the place. So pink pearl is a really good kind of eraser to get large amounts of graphite off, and also dark amounts of graphite. But you can see that we got these crumbs. I have, here we are. Now, you're not going to get one of these if you want to buy one of these sometimes, but it's a big brush, and I use that to just clean off my paper instead of my hand, because otherwise I'm just going to get this all smeary. That might be a good investment if you want to ask for something like that for Christmas. They make them in different sizes, smaller and bigger, but you might want to try something like that. All right, another kind of eraser is an art gum. Now, an art gum is really kind of absorbs this graphite a lot. It crumbles a bunch, and that's really kind of what it was intended for. So if you can see this, it's going to crumble even more so than that pink pearl. It's kind of, I don't use this one very much, but it's really super soft. You're not going to scratch your paper with this. But you can see that we've got a lot of debris here that we're going to have to brush off. And I don't think it erases that real dark quite as well as the pink pearl. So, but they're kind of fun, but they make a mess. So that's art gum. And most of these erasers are, like 50 cents a piece, or no more than $1. I wouldn't go spending anything more than that. Now we have these polymer erasers, and they're real plasticky, and again they erase and leave a lot of crumbs too, but sometimes this really gives you a kind of a finer line. You can get a corner of this and kind of pull out sometimes, maybe if you're doing hair on a beard or something like that. This is another good eraser for erasing a lot of dark kind of graphite. So, but again, it leaves a lot of debris. The last one I want to talk about, and this is the way it looks to begin with, it's called a kneadable eraser. It feels like Play-Doh. It starts off nice and pretty like this, but what happens as you start using it is it gets kind of dirty. This really absorbs the oil off of your hands, and this is what the one I was going to talk about, because it's really fun to play with. You just want to mush it around. But what happens, the more you do that, the more oil you get on this, and then it starts absorbing that graphite even more. So this, though, is quite a bit different than the pink pearls or any of these other erasers that I showed you, is because it doesn't erase dark stuff very well at all. It's not made for that. but it is made to get in corners. So I can shape this, and if I wanted to just like pull out maybe some reflections in an eyeball, I can get in here and I can do that. I can also pull it around and get a clean spot. So if I want it to, let's see, I probably didn't darken that up enough. But I can kind of get some thin lines. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that as well. Yeah, I think it's showing up. But really, there's no crumbs on there. It all came down on the corner of this this Kneadable Eraser, and you can see it got kind of dark right there. So then I just fold it over and get another spot and erase a little bit more. And you can see it got dirty again, so I'd fold it over. And this can be pretty black before it's really, its useful lifespan is over. So this is a really handy one. And now notice there's no debris. I'm not going to have to brush it off, so I'm going to eliminate the need for dealing with these smudges. If you did have a smudge though, let's try to smudge it a little bit. You can see how it's a little dark out here, and I've been moving my hand around, and let's say that I got that smudge. Well, now I can use this not only just as a small eraser, but I can use it as a big eraser, and I can get rid of those smudges. There's a smudge up here, and see there's hardly any, very little anyway, or hardly any crumbs at all, where you didn't have to brush it off and create more smudges. So this is a really, really handy kind of thing. There's, again, 50 cents or maybe less than that. You could probably get it at Hobby Lobby or Michael's. But if I was going to start off with, I would definitely have a pink pearl, and I'd have a Kneadable Eraser if you're looking for that Christmas list or something that you want to buy. Now, again, I'm going to give you an Ebony Pencil. You'll probably have just a regular HB or #2 pencil just laying around the house. But if your mom or dad wants to, or grandma wants to give you something else, then I might suggest 4H. Again, I don't use that very often because it does make a really light line, but it seems to scratch the paper for me. Maybe I got a little too heavy hand, but I definitely wouldn't get. I don't think that there's going to be much of a need for an H or 8H. Maybe just to stay with a 2H. Then we got the HB, maybe a 4B. Or a 6B, somewhere in here, and then an ebony. So you could get one of these, but the ebony is a really good, handy kind of thing. So that's the basics of it. Now, I tell people that I hate mechanical pencils, and a mechanical pencil is one that you kind of click, and I know it stays sharp. You push it, and the lead comes out. You can kind of see. It usually has a really narrow lead. Like this one is a 0.7, so it's actually kind of a thicker one. It's kind of nice because it has some really thin lines, and you can do things like cross-hatching that we'll talk about later. And it always stays razor sharp. That's kind of nice. But if you're trying to lay down smooth gradients, then a pencil that you can sharpen. So look at the difference between the thickness of the pencils. So this is going to be a little bit easier to get smooth shading. This is obviously going to be better for fine detail. So again, there's some good for some things, not so good for others. So you can get this at Staples or Walmart or whatever. This is Twisties. It's by Pentel. My family really likes this. I like this. It's got really a polymer eraser on the end of it. So it's kind of got 2-in-1. But there are some other ones here a little bit fancier. This one's a 0.3, so it's a much smaller lead. I don't know if we can get that focused on there. I've got another one that's 0.5, and then I've got another this one. Well, this one was 0.7. So significantly different thicknesses in lead. These are a little bit more expensive. It does have an eraser. You pull this off, and there's a little tiny eraser. But typically, most art pencils, like hopefully you noticed on like my HB, That's not an eraser. That's just the end of the pencil. So you know, they expect you to do a lot of erasing, and that's why you just buy one of these bigger erasers. Um, there are other kinds of things that you can get into later on. This is just a big chunk of graphite. It's a 9B. It's pretty black, and this is kind of good for a lot of times in art school. You might do a life drawing where it's quick and it's huge. So like if I was going to make an eye, and I can hammer in some quick shades and stuff really quite quickly. And it's kind of got its neat purposes too. But we're not going to necessarily be using that, but that's just, you might find that in Hobby Lobby or Michael's or some other store. There are a few other ones that have, like this one is the same kind of thing. They're all graded. Like this one is a 4H. It's kind of written on here. It's just one big stick of lead. Kind of, you have to push this. It opens up these little, this little mouth. A lot of times drafters and drafting architects would use this. They would put it in, and this is the way they sharpen it. They would put it down in here to get the right length, and then they would go around, and they could wipe it off, and then they would get a super sharp point. But this is a little bit older, and I think probably these do a much better job of staying sharp. You don't have to worry about them dulling down. So this is probably going to cost you $3 or $4 or $5, up to maybe even some of them are like $10, depending on how they're balanced. I don't think you need a $10 pencil at all. So the other thing is, a lot of times art teachers will like you to use a hand pencil sharpener. Otherwise, sometimes the metal, or the electric one, I'm sorry, the electric ones sharpen too much, and they just waste too much of the pencil. So here you can kind of sharpen it to your own desire and kind of carefully do it. We're probably gonna, if you're at home, you're gonna need whatever kind of pencil sharpener you have. To get this way though, I use an X-Acto knife, and I can carve this away. A lot of times I do this, give me a lot of lead exposed. That way I can lay the pencil down and I can get thicker lines. Right now I don't have it kind of tuned in there, but I can get nice thick lines if I want to try to get a large area with a gradient or something. But I do that with an X-Acto knife. So you gotta kind of be careful, and obviously parental guidance is suggested. Last two things here are some other different kinds of erasers. These are erasers that are kind of like this pencil, where you press on the end and it has a lengthy little bit of eraser, and now I can come in here and I can get thinner lines if I want to. But again, this is like a polymer eraser, and it's going to leave me some crumbs. This one just has a little fatter shape here, and I'll see that this is really so much graphite on there that even this is going to be hard. It's going to kind of smudge it. So you just kind of have to be careful which tool you use. So anyway, recap: 4H, HB, maybe a 4 or 6B, and then an ebony. For erasers, I would do a pink pearl and a kneadable eraser. Okay, that's all you have to do. You could probably do that with under $5, and then some paper, and we'll talk about that later in our first assignment. So I hope you guys enjoy this, and hopefully show this to your parents if they're thinking about, what do I buy them? You know, ideally you don't have to buy them anything, buy anything, because I'm going to give you a ebony pencil and a pink pearl and probably a kneadable eraser, but you may go through this one semester, and you may have to get your own after that. So, but even if you're just interested in getting more things for yourself, hopefully that's going to be helpful. All right. Well, I look forward to seeing what you can do and what your artwork's going to turn out to be. So, you have any questions, feel free to email me anytime. See you soon.